seems like nobody gets the full picture. Like, some people get that family courts are messed up, and some people get that women have unreasonable expectations in the dating world, and just different bits and pieces. And then you got the Daily Wire men going like, there's no problem, get out there. And I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Does anybody get all of the parts and pieces of these issues? Welcome back to Far From Eden. So good to have you here. Please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this with your friends if you think it's something they need to hear or would enjoy. I really like the way this channel is evolving. We're so new, really, in the grand scheme of things. I never thought it would ever be monetized. Like, it didn't occur to me that would happen. That is not the point of the channel at all. Otherwise, I'd probably talk about things that are easier. But anyway, I'm not crazy obsessed with being popular. You know, I'm obsessed with truth, and that's what, you know, and we've been getting more to the heart of the truth. Why is society where it is? Why is the family court system messed up? Why is dating messed up? Why are divorces happening en masse? Why? And a lot of us will go, well, feminism. And then there's disagreement of, well, when was it bad? And was it good in the beginning, etc. So the way the channel is going is that we are getting to the root of it. And the root started a long, long time ago in a garden. And it has to do with female nature and ignoring female nature. Today, we're going to go over Paul Harvey's If I Were the Devil. Paul Harvey I don't know if he's still alive. Should have researched that. National treasure. Anyway, my dad shared some of his stuff with me when I was a kid. I had the little cassette tapes, and it was very wholesome and thought-provoking, and I just have such respect for the man. And I actually didn't hear this, I don't know what you would call it, a speech or radio address that he gave in 1965. I actually hadn't heard this until probably a couple years ago. And like I said, he said this on the radio in 1965. Keep that in your head the whole time while we're reading this, because it is so accurate. He's so accurate, it's scary. Now, I'm a little over the fear because I've sort of that's the way I already think it's going. It's what I think is behind all of it. And, anyway. So Paul Harvey, and we got small print, so I gotta nerd out on you guys, but at least they're purple. Paul Harvey's If I Were the Devil, transcript from 1965. I'm going to read their little thing here that they have in front of it. In 1965, Paul Harvey broadcasted If I Were the Devil. It is really amazing to realize that over 47 years ago, when was this printed? Because I'm going to be 47 and I wasn't born in 1965, but that's all right. How accurately he prophesied the future spiritual conditions of the United States. Many of his statements were considered ridiculously outlandish at the time in history, yet we find ourselves today. ... Paul Harvey's If I Were the Devil transcript. If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population. But I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you, as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. Exactly. He doesn't talk about feminism in this. But when he says he would seize the United States, take over the United States, and subvert the churches, how was that done? What was their means of subverting the churches? What did they do to take the churches and totally take it off track? Well, they empowered women to be ministers, to speak in church, and they don't say anything about women not raising their children. They don't say anything about, sending girls off to college to, do God knows what with God knows who. They don't talk about that stuff. So when he says subvert the churches, I feel like I know how they did it. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old, I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. That's the boomers. Something happened in the middle of the 20th century, right after World War II. The boomers grew up trusting the government for everything, looking to the government to fix problems. And it makes sense because in the 40s or maybe late 30s, I'm not exactly sure, but that's when FDR produced the New Deal. And that's all the welfare programs. And so rather than look to God for provision, rather than trust in God, it was all towards the federal government. And it was all basically, look, we defeated the evil in Germany. And so people just put their faith in government. It's so true. And when he says that he would convince the young that the Bible is a myth, well, how is that happening? It's happening in school because they were not learning Bible, and mom's at work. Of course, dad's at work. That's his job. Provide, protect. Mom needs to be there reading the Bible to the children, including that in their learning. They go to a government secular school. Of course, everything they're learning, dinosaurs, evolution, and before BCE, before Common Era, it all erases God, right? And so if mom were at home, if government schools weren't the way that our children are educated, you won't be able to whisper in their ears. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's why I haven't made a video in a couple days. A little bit of a bug, but that's okay. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. And they make it so we think it's our decision, right? Women think, oh, I want to have a job, I want independence, blah, blah, blah. You were conditioned to think that. That is a total psyop. You were conditioned to think that. Because getting you out of the way as an influence in your children and your family's life, because you are very valuable women, when they remove that, it's a free-for-all. And we all go, oh gosh, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that. I guess I'll go to the doctor and get, a benzodiazepine or an antidepressant or anything. Rather than say, oh, do you know why you are like this? Because you are not in your proper role. You're not supposed to be out there doing what you're doing. You're not supposed to not have your children with you. It's not reasonable. This is why women cry when they take their kids, drop them off to kindergarten the first day. Because it's not the way it's supposed to be. But it's exactly as Paul Harvey is saying. They drive wedges in the nuclear family, and that's how the devil gets in. And feminism is the best wedge driver. Here we go. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families that war with themselves churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. That is totally female. They don't discipline emotions. They don't teach kids to control emotions, anything. In fact, they are trying to make these kids emotional, particularly the boys, which is unnatural. Emotions in school, like learn arithmetic, learn reading. You're not supposed to go to school to learn the things your parents are supposed to teach you, which is why government schools really don't make any sense when you really start to think about it. It really doesn't. Those are a bunch of strangers. You don't know who they are. You don't know who these people are. You don't know who's like, there's all these kids in your kid's class. You don't know who their parents are. You don't know what, I learned a lot of stuff when I went to public school for the first time in second grade. I was horrified. And that was even like a pretty square school. But I had been at a private Catholic school in Connecticut. And then just being around those other kids can be damaging because of what they're exposed to. Things you shouldn't know as a child. But the devil gets in, doesn't he? Sure does. So if my mom had been educating me, I imagine things would have been much better. Oh gosh, it's just so crazy accurate, because talking about mesmerizing media fanning the flames, this was 1965. Like, they didn't have, streaming and TV service. Like, people barely had televisions, and televisions barely had 3 channels. There weren't any videos, there weren't DVDs, let alone a smartphone. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects but neglect to discipline emotions. Right? Just let those run wild until, before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Please understand, if you are younger than 40, how crazy it would be in 1965 to think about having metal detectors at the door of a school. Like, that's, no wonder they thought, you're insane. What are you talking about? That could never happen. And that's the mistake. That could never happen in America. That's the boomers trusting the government. Because, we defeated the evil in the middle of the 20th century, even though we were on the side of the other evil. And we were like, hey, Uncle Joe, and it was Stalin. Anyway, this is so big. Gosh. Okay. Oh, within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Right. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the House of Congress. I think that's done, and done. People talk about separation of church and state. Well, that's what the Bolsheviks did in Russia in 1918. That was like their first order of business. Church and state. And you know what they told them? You know what they told the people? Oh, you can worship however you please or not worship. We're not here to tell you that. But what they wanted to do was just get any sort of religion out of any of their laws. That means the government is the be all end all. So you really don't want separation of church and state. You really don't. Not like this. Obviously, we don't want to be forced to participate in a religion, but that doesn't mean you remove the religion that inspired the government in the first place. Or do it and look, maybe you like what's going on today. I don't know. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify the science. Anybody remember 2020? Anybody remember that? Trust the science? Yeah. Which was in Washington. So let's just combine all the things we're going to trust and worship and put our faith in. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbols of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. Well, certainly Easter is all about the bunny and the egg. People just have completely forgotten what it is, what it's for, it's more, Easter is, I remember my mom teaching me, Easter is more important than Christmas. As a Christian, Easter is more important. And that's fine if you're not a Christian. That's totally fine. But the problem is that the Christians replaced it, the resurrection with the bunny and the eggs. And then with the bottle at Christmas, I think he's referring to alcoholism. And again, if you're young, you may, or you didn't speak to your grandparents, your parents, whatever, you may not realize like the drinking that goes on in today's society, just cavalier, just drinking alone, drinking during the day. I remember when I was a kid, it was like, you don't do those things. Like, you don't drink alone. If you're drinking alone, you're probably an alcoholic. I remember that from when I was a kid. And if, you're drinking every day, like all these things. And now, day drinking, I heard day drinking for the very first time, I think it was 2017. And I was like, day drinking? But that, it shouldn't be a thing. Let alone going out and getting drunk. Ladies just didn't do that. Gentlemen didn't do that. It's unbecoming. And it's not biblical. You're not supposed to be a drunkard. You're not supposed to have gluttony either, but here we all are, waddling around. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. I don't see a lot of incentive around. I see a lot of people whining, wanting other people's stuff. And that's just fanning the flame of socialism. And what do you bet I could get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich? I would caution against extremes and hard work in patriotism. Yeah, it's racist now, right? Being a hard worker, organizing your pantry. What are the other silly things that are supposedly racist? Hard work in patriotism. In moral conduct, I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun. See, they didn't really even have words for it because people were not promiscuous. Birth control was not widely available in 1965. And so you didn't have this promiscuity going on because women could get pregnant and they knew it because there were consequences. And how many kids are like, they don't value marriage in the first place. And now with what's happened in the family courts, even if they did at one time, they realize that government marriage is absolutely a trap for men. There's no incentive to sign a contract where the other person gains if it's broken. She breaks it and she gains. That's not a contract you want to get into with anybody, ever. I'm going to start that sentence over again. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on the TV is the way to be. Or on Instagram, just think Kim Kardashian. And if you're not convinced, look at Kim Kardashian, look at her face, look at her hairstyle, all that, and then look at all the women and the filters they use. She's certainly like what everybody seems to be trying to emulate, because that's the way to be. And thus, I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. 1 in 3 women has a STD. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep on right on doing what he's doing. Yeah, would. And if Paul Harvey knew the amount of children who are murdered each year through abortion, I mean, he was so right. how could he have possibly understood what the media would grow to be? Imagine if he knew that we were going to have these phones in our pockets and be able to, just look up anything and be entertained constantly. That is, ask yourself, how could he have possibly known this? He just took what he knew. In 1965, even though I think it would be impossible for him to see the future and see where we are here, he could look back to, say, 1930, 1920, and realize that in 1965, women were starting to not be women anymore. Families weren't operating the same way they did anymore. People were very distracted by media. He saw those things happening and clearly saw the trajectory. So from where we are here, and we see their trajectory from this point, that's why so many of us are like, it's going to take a hard reset. There's just certain things you just cannot roll back. There's just certain things you cannot vote out. It will take a reset. However, I can tell you that it really won't take long if there's a, electrical grid failure, some sort of real hardship happens in the United States where, daddy government isn't filling in the gaps for women. They're going to have to get, they're going to have to straighten their attitude. One of you guys commented, I can't remember which one it was, I'm so sorry, but one of you guys commented, imagine in the future, there's a group of guys, like it's, grid down situation, right? The stuff is not going well. The government isn't functioning like it does now. And imagine there's, it's just complete, the whole society's in disarray. So imagine there's a group of men sitting around a campfire and they've got like, I don't know, a wild boar or whatever. I don't know if the commenter said like what kind of meat it was, but let's say they're doing that and they've got a ton. And then there's like a few women over here and they're just barely dragging. They don't have shelter. They don't have food, And I think the commenter said something like, I wonder what the price will be to eat. And that sounds really, really harsh, but this world is harsh. And there are certain things in this world that are just facts. Facts don't care about your feelings. So you can think, oh, I can survive, I'm tough. That's nice. No, sweetheart, you're not. We're not designed to be outside. We're not designed to do those things. Literally not designed for that. We're designed to make babies and nurture them and help train them up in the way our husband designs. Like that's what we're designed for. And is what makes us happy. It's difficult after you get a lot of brainwashing in school, and that's why the devil knew. And Paul Harvey knew. He had the guts to look at it from the devil's point of view and go, wow. Because if you think for 1 second that the devil isn't smart, if you think for 1 second that he doesn't hate Christendom and doesn't want to absolutely destroy it, then you are wrong. And even if you don't believe, just at least take a second and go, it's weird though that he knew. Maybe just think, maybe I don't believe, but maybe I need to start operating as if I do. I learned that from Dr. Peterson. So thanks, you guys. I'm glad we got to go over this together. Take care of yourselves, please. I love you, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like. Bye.